everyone, Sapphire here again for week 4 of our Sirdar Crochet Along, our summer picnic blanket, and we are over that halfway mark already. Don't worry if you are still working your way through the previous weeks, the videos will always be there, so just work in your own time to catch up. This week, very excited about this one, we are working our week 4 cherries, and we work our cherries into our raspberry ripple panel that we completed in week 3. So in week 4 we are going over some of the techniques that we've already covered in previous weeks, so we should know those, but we're just doing them in different colours, so it's not going to be too technical. The other bit here again looks so complicated to complete our cherries, but it's not. The video will give you exactly what stitch to go into, how many loops we should have, where we should be popping our leaves, and you can pause, rewind, go back again as many times as you need. No one's going to notice that. You are just going to end up with some lovely cherries like this. So to start our week 4, we're going to join into the top of our raspberry ripple panel that we completed in week 3. We're just going to turn that so we're working into the wrong side of our work. In the first row, we are going to chain 1 and complete a double crochet into each stitch all the way along. And we've done a lot of these stitches before. Our next row we have treble crochets to complete, and then we have our eyelets that we've done previously, and then further treble crochets. And when we get to our row 6, we are going to be completing our iced pink and pink coloured checkers. So we will just whiz along with our first 4 rows, and I will meet you at the end of row 5. Okay, so we've just completed our row 5 for week 4, and we're about to start our checkers in pink. Oh, that's iced pink, and this is pink. So both of those colours we need to be carrying this along in our tapestry crochet as we've done before. So we're going to start row 6 with iced pink with a chain 2 to start. And we're going to add a half treble crochet into that very first stitch. And then a half treble crochet into the next 3, changing to pink on the last half treble crochet. So if we get our pink ready, we have an iced pink drawing up the loop into that last stitch there, and then we're adding our pink colour to finish off the half treble crochet. And we've just changed seamlessly into our pink. And with tapestry crochet, we just want to make sure we're catching those yarn ends along the work as we stitch. So we're going to add 3 pink treble crochets. So we're yarning over, inserting the hook, just making sure we catch those ends there, pulling up a loop, yarning over and drawing through. Again, the second one. On the third stitch, we are changing our colour to iced pink, ready to complete the next set. We just finish that stitch, that half treble, with our iced pink. And we go ahead and we can then add 3 treble crochets in our iced pink, changing to pink on the last stitch, and we complete this all the way along our row until the very last 7 stitches, where we will then show you how to finish off that row. So we're just at the end of our row here, and we're going to have 7 stitches to complete. And just to note, in the pattern, your next set of stitches will be iced pink, not the pink I've got here for my swatch. It's just because it's a little bit smaller. And then we should end this row as per the pattern in the pink colours, the darker one, not the iced pink, as I'm about to do so. So we're just going to finish up here. So we're going to add our 3 trebles in the next colour. Changing to our last colour with that last stitch. So again, in the pattern it would be the darker pink than the iced. And we just want to leave the colour that we've got there behind so we can pick it up on our next row. And we're completing 4 treble crochets in that last colour. So for row 7, we're going to turn our work, and we're completing our tapestry crochet along, mirroring the colours that we've already done. I'll just show you how we're going to tidy up the colour here for the pink, and we can carry on. So we're going to chain 2 to start this row, and we start with 4 treble crochets. Changing to the pink, or it'll be iced pink for yourselves in the pattern. So changing to your next colour on your last stitch. So we just pick that up there. And you can see it's kind of going across there, even though it's the wrong side of our work, we want it to be neat. So a little tip here, just going to yarn over, but also catch that piece of yarn that's pulled over there and insert our hook into the first stitch. And it just pulls it back, as we can see there, and we can complete our next set of colours. So we're going to work in tapestry crochet as we have for row 6 for our row 7, mirroring each of the colours until the very end, and I will meet you there. So we're just finishing up our last few stitches for row 7. We're just going to change to our very last colour that we're mirroring on this tapestry crochet. And we do want to carry this last thread through to the end so we can tie it off and weave it in at the end. So we'll end up with 4 treble crochets in pink, iced pink, to finish. And we're going to just complete the very last one there, pulling up a loop, if I can find my scissors. So we can snip both of those ends now and then tie a knot and worry about those ends at the end. So we've completed our pink checkers, and we've also completed our nice rows of white here to really give those colours a pop. And it'll be much the same, so we've got a few more rows of white to go ahead and do, which we've done previously. So I will leave you to go ahead and do those, and I will meet you at row 10 where we attach our new colour, Bluebell. So we've just completed our row 9 in white for our treble crochets, and we're going to start row 10 with Bluebell. We just attach our Bluebell colour into the very first stitch, leaving a tail to weave in at the end. And we're going to start the row with chain 3 and add 1 treble crochet into each stitch along. So 1 treble crochet into the first and 1 treble crochet into each stitch until the end. So we're at the end of our row 10. We're just going to turn our work. And we're starting row 11 in a similar way, starting off nice and simply before we get to our cherries. We're just chaining 3, and then we're adding 1 treble crochet into each stitch until the very end. And then I'll meet you at row 12, where we need to set up some places for us to pop our cherry baubles. So we've just completed our row 11 in a bluebell with our treble crochets. We're just going to turn our work back to the right side. Now it's important for the next few rows to pay attention to our pattern, just so we are looking at the right side of our work, but we'll call those out each time in the pattern. So we're going to now make our spaces ahead of popping our cherries in place. So we're going to start the row with a chain 3. Adding a treble crochet into that first stitch. And then this is where our pattern repeat begins. So we're going to add 1 treble crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And then 2 treble crochets into the next. That's 1 and then 2. And this is where we're going to create a space similar to our eyelets before, where we're going to pop our cherry in the next rows, but we're just going to create the space ready for it now. So we're going to chain 1, skipping that 1 stitch, and then we're going to do a new stitch. So 1 treble crochet, 2 stitches together. So we're going to yarn over. We're skipping the stitch for our space, inserting the hook, drawing up a loop, yarning over, pulling through 2. Then we're yarning over, putting it into the next stitch, not quite finishing the first, yarning over, pulling up a loop and drawing through 2. So we're completing the treble crochet stitch across 2 to make 1. So we've decreased a stitch here, following an increase. So we're going to now 1 treble crochet into the next 2 stitches. And we're going to chain 1 and skip a stitch to create a space, and then pop 2 treble crochets into the next stitch. So we've chained 1, skipping 1, adding 2 into the next. And then we're going to add 1 treble crochet into the next 2 stitches. So here we've created 2 spaces ready to add our 2 bubbles for our cherry. So we're going to start the pattern repeat again. We're going to add 1 treble crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And then 2 treble crochets into the next. And we're going to add another space ready for another set of cherries. So we're going to chain 1, skipping a stitch, and then we're doing the 1 treble crochet, 2 stitches together, again following our skip stitch. So we're yarning over, inserting the hook, pulling up a loop, yarning over, drawing through 2, and then we're adding another half a stitch almost into the next. So yarning over, drawing up a loop, yarning over, pulling through 2, yarning over, drawing through all of those there. And then we'll add 1 treble crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Chain 1 to create another space for our next bobble, skipping a space, then we're adding a stitch, skipping a stitch, then we're adding 2 treble crochets into the next. And then lastly for this pattern repeat, we're adding 1 more treble crochet into the next 2 stitches. Now we repeat this all the way until the last, ending with 1 treble crochet. So we've just finished our row 12 in Bluebell, and as I'm working on a much smaller swatch than the pattern, I've only got space to create 2 sets of cherries. So ignore this part of our blanket, it'll look very different for your own. You should end up with 184 stitches at the end of row 12 because we've added some increases, but don't worry about that for now because we will fix that at row 14. So we're going to add our Cupid for our cherries into the very first stitch, keeping in mind we're staying on the right side of our work here. Leaving a tail to weave in at the end. And we're going to start row 13 with a chain 1, adding 1 double crochet into that very first stitch. We're then going to chain 4. And that's chain 4. And this is where it gets a little bit fiddly. So we are going to be working behind row 12 into the stitch that we skipped from row 11. So we're going to add a 7 treble crochet bobble into the skipped stitch behind row 12. So sometimes it's easier just to flip that row in front so you've got your stitch ready to add your bobble into. And we've done these bobbles previously in our week 2 for watermelon, but these are slightly bigger, so we just need to add a few more stitches. So we're yarning over, inserting into that skipped stitch, drawing up a loop, yarning over, pulling through 2. And we need to do that 7 times. So that's 1, 2, and 3. 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now a good trick to get through all of these loops on our hook is to just give it a wiggle, and we should have 2, 4, 6, 8 loops on our hook at the end of this process. So we're yarning over, drawing through all of those. And if you get caught up and you can't quite get through that last one, just pick it up, no problem. Pull that nice and tight. So our first bobble is worked there. We'll worry about pushing these through at the very end of our row. So we're now going to chain 3 and create another 7 treble crochet bobble into the next skipped stitch. So let's pull this row forward so we can see the stitch nice and clearly. Add another 7 treble crochet bobble into this stitch here. So I've lost count, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Need 1 more in there. 7, and then we're going to draw through all of those, pulling it nice and tight. We're going to chain 7, and find the next space to create another bobble. So next 7 treble crochet bobble for our cherry goes into here. We complete this process all the way along, and I will meet you at the end. So we've completed our last cherry for our row. So we're going to chain 4. You're going to just find that last stitch. So on your row, your last stitch, just need to add a double crochet into that last stitch. and we will tie off our Cupid colour, just ignoring that mine's not quite the same as yours. And to bring our bobbles back through to the front of the work, we simply just pop them through as so. So it's like we've worked a row behind the initial one that we created to set up those spaces for our cherries. And then we will move on to create our next layer of bluebell and then further into our stems. Okay, so we have just finished our Cupid cherries and we're now starting row 14, sticking to the right side of our work in our bluebell. Just going to join bluebell into the very first stitch, leaving a tail to weave in at the end. And this row is where we're going to get our stitch count back down from 184 to 170 so we can continue for our pattern. I'm just going to chain 3 to start and then add a treble crochet into that first stitch. And we're working back into the stitches that we created in row 12. So the bluebell, we're not working into the chains of Cupid. So we're going to add 1 treble crochet into each stitch until we are greeted with the first chain 1 space above our cherry bobble. And then we add 1 treble crochet into the first cherry bobble space and 1 treble crochet into each of the stitches in between. So this bit's important. We don't add a treble crochet into our second cherry space. We're just adding our treble into the stitch alone. This is where we're losing our stitch just to get back down to 170 stitches at the end of this row. Good way to remember it is 1 treble crochet into the first cherry space, no treble crochet into the second each time. And that's it, repeated all the way to the end of this row. And I will meet you there, ready to do our turning. So we've just got 1 more stitch to make in this last Cupid stitch here. Again, my swatch is a little bit smaller, so we don't quite have enough to go ahead and complete a whole repeat for the cherries. Just going to chain, oh, we need to turn first before I get excited and get ahead of myself. So we're turning, so this is what the back of our work looks like. If those cherries pop back through, just push them through again. They will eventually just sit there nicely when they're used to sitting at the front of our work. I'm just going to chain 3. And we're adding 1 treble crochet in each stitch to the end, and we'll end up with 170 treble crochets at the end of row 15, where we can move on and we will add our stems to our cherries. So we've just finished row 15 of our bluebell on a wrong side, so we've just turned our work and we're now about to attach our grass colour, ready to make our stems and leaves for our cherries. So attach grass into the very first stitch, and we are chaining 1, adding 1 double crochet into that first stitch, and then we're going to add 1 double crochet into the next 7 stitches. One more, and there we go. So we're at the point where we're going to create our first leaf. So we need to chain 5. And an easy way to do this is just count back 4 stitches to work out the placement of our leaf. So 1, 2, 3, 4. and we're working into not row 15, we're catching a stitch from row 14 in Bluebell, 4 stitches back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, directly below, just catching that stitch there and slip stitching to anchor that chain where we want it. We're just going to add 1 double crochet into the chain 5 space, 1 half treble crochet, 3 treble crochets, this is all into that chain 5 space, and 1 half treble crochet, finishing off with 1 double crochet into that chain 5 space. You see we have a nice little leaf there. Again, you can pause and rewind if we need to go back over that again. So we're going to create our stems now for our cherries because they're a bit, oh, they're missing something, aren't they? Yarn over 3 times. Inserting front to back, grabbing our cherry, pulling up a loop, yarning over through 2, yarning over through 2, and then here's where we need to go through, yarn over, pull through all 3. Again, yarn over 3 times, insert for the next cherry, drawing up a loop, yarning over through 2, yarning over through 2, and then finally yarning over and through 3 there. And just to anchor this back onto our work, we're going to add 1 double crochet into the next 12 stitches, so not into the stitch that we've done previously, just the next one. So 1, 2, and we just move along for 12 stitches. And we're at the point where we need to make another leaf. So as we've done before, chaining 5 and finding that point where we're going to anchor our leaf down. So we've got back 4 stitches and down to that row, catching the stitch and slipping it through. And we can complete our leaf again with 1 double crochet into the chain 5 space, 1 half treble, 3 treble crochets, 1 half treble, and 1 double. And then we are at the point to add our stems back to the cherry as we have previously. So we're yarning over 3 times, inserting the hook, catching our cherry bobble, drawing up a loop, yarning over through 2, yarning over through 2, finishing off with the yarn over through 3. Repeat it again, yarn over 3 times, drawing up a loop, yarning over through 2, yarning over through 2, yarning over through 3. And we repeat this all the way until the very last set of cherry bobbles, the double crochet at the end of your work. So there's 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 5. Finishing with 1 to make it 6. And here we go. We have our cherries with our stems and our leaves. We're going to turn our work, working in Bluebell. Just attach our yarn into the very first stitch. Now this row, we're just working treble crochets again as we have done previously. We've just got to be a bit careful about where we're placing our trebles over those stems and leaves from previous. So we're chaining 3 to start, adding 1 treble crochet into each stitch until the very end. So let's just get to where we've created those leaves and stems, and I'll show you where we should be placing our stitch. So we're at the point where we have created our leaf and our stems on the front of our work. You see it looks a little bit higgledy-piggledy here, so we just need to make sure that we're only adding a stitch into the stitch itself and not working between the leaf and another stitch. So yarning over, inserting into the stitch that we built the chain from, and we're just adding a treble crochet there. Working to the next place. I'll show you that again. Just adding 1 treble crochet into each of the stitches. And again, we're at a point where we've created our leaf and our stems. Just going to add our treble crochet into the stitch itself. Just seeing there the stitch. And just treble crochet all the way to the end of your row. We do not cut our bluebell colour for moving on to our checkers. So we're just going to finish off that and turn our work back to the right side facing, keeping our bluebell in place. We're actually bringing in Lagoon Blue first, but we don't want to cut this off. We can keep this as an end so we don't have an extra to weave in. Just going to add our Lagoon Blue to start our checks. So we've made these in the start of week 4 in pink. We're just going to slip that colour in there, ready to start our row. We'll anchor that all down when we weave in at the end. And we're just going to chain 2 and add 1 half treble crochet into the first stitch, catching our bluebell to carry it along in the same manner as we have with our tapestry crochet. And then our pattern repeats, so 3 treble crochets in Lagoon Blue, changing to bluebell on that last stitch. And then 3 half treble crochets in bluebell, catching our Lagoon Blue, changing to the Lagoon Blue at the end of the 3rd stitch. And we repeat this all the way along for row 18. And then we're going to mirror that as we had done before with our pinks, but in the blues, for the following row, for row 19. And then we have 1 more row of double crochets in white just to finish off week 4. So we have finished our week 4 panel. We've got our cherries and our leaves. We've got some tapestry crochet here. And just note that if we are struggling with the leaves or the cherries, we can just rewind and go back and pause and reflect. If we need to do those again, you can do that as many times as you like. So we're going to make our strawberry using our lovely red tomato colour. This fruit is worked in rows, so we're going to start by adding a slip knot to our hook. And we're going to chain 2 to start. So for row 1, we need to add 2 half treble crochets into the second chain from the hook. So that's the chain closest to our knot because we only made 2. So we're just adding our 2 half trebles into that stitch. And then we're going to turn. It feels like a very small piece of work to turn. We're going to chain 2. Now this chain 2 does not count as a stitch here, so we almost have to just ignore our chain 2s. We're just building up so we can jump up to the height of our half treble crochets for each row. We're going to add 2 half treble crochets into each of our 2 stitches that we already made for row 1. So this is row 2. That's the first and the second, third and fourth. So end up with 2 increases. I'm going to turn, chaining 2 to start for row 3. And here we're just adding our increase at the very start of our row and at the end. So we're going to add 2 half treble crochets into the first stitch. 1 half treble crochet in the 2 stitches in between. And then 2 half treble crochets in the last stitch. Then we're going to turn again. You see we're getting the point of our strawberry. So we're going to chain 2. Again, we're adding our increases at the very first stitch and the last stitch. So we're going to add 2 half treble crochets into the first stitch. One half treble crochet in the 4 in between. And then 2 half treble crochets into the last, finishing row 4 with 8 half treble crochets. Turn our work, chaining 2. So we're not increasing on row 5, so we're just going to add 1 half treble crochet into each stitch all the way along for 8 stitches. And we're going to turn our work. In row 6, we're just adding our chain 2 to start. We're adding our increases into the first and the last stitch again. So 2 half trebles into the first, 1 half treble crochet into the 6 in between, and then 2 half trebles into the last. Ending on 10 half treble crochets. We're going to turn our work. Row 7 does not have an increase at the start of the end, so we're just adding 1 half treble crochet into each stitch at the end for 10 stitches. We're going to turn our work. For row 8, we're going to chain 2, and we're going to add our increases at the start and the end of the rows we have done before. 2 half trebles into the first, 1 half treble crochet into each of the next 8, and then 2 half trebles into the last stitch to increase. And then we're going to turn our work, and we're going to chain 2. So for row 9, 10 and 11, we're just going to add 1 half treble crochet to each stitch to the end, not adding any increases here. So we've made it to row 12. We're just going to turn our work, going to chain 2, and we're going to decrease over the first set of 2 stitches and at the end for the last 2 stitches. So to do this, I'm going to do a half treble 2 together. So we're yarning over, inserting our hook, drawing up a loop. We're not yarning over again for the next, we're just popping our hook in, and then it creates almost like a half treble with those 4 loops across 2 stitches to close. Then we're going to add 1 half treble crochet into the next 8 stitches. And then at the end, we've got 2 stitches to work that half treble crochet 2 together again to decrease. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook, draw up a loop. We're not yarning over again for the second part of this stitch, just drawing up a loop. We're yarning over and drawing through all 4. We're starting to create the top of our strawberry there. So we're going to turn our work, chain 2. And again, we're working our decreases at the start and the end of our work. So we're working a half treble crochet 2 together, and yarning over, inserting our hook, drawing up a loop. We're not yarning over for the second part of this stitch, just drawing up a loop, yarning over and drawing through all 4 of those loops there. Then we're going to add 1 half treble crochet into the next 6 stitches. Leaving us with just the last 2 to add another half treble crochet 2 together. So yarn over, insert, drawing up a loop. We're not yarning over again for the last stitch, just popping our hook in, drawing up a loop, yarning over, drawing through all 4 there. So for row 14, we kind of turn into completing a round. So we're not working back on ourselves, we're working down the side of our strawberry. And we're just going to add 1 double crochet. It doesn't need to be perfect or neat, no specifics here, just into each end of the row that you can kind of see where your hook naturally falls, all the way to the point. So we'll just do a few of those. So here we go. There's 1 space that I can see nice and neatly there. Just adding a double crochet. I can see another there. Adding our double crochet. And it's just to neaten up those edges of those rows, because our strawberry should be a little bit more round and plump in appearance. So we've made it to the very end, and we just want to add 2 double crochets into the point here, just so we can round that off nicely. If we're being a little bit clever, we can sneak in our end so we have 1 less to worry about at the end. We can snip him off. So we're just going to carry that along whilst we add our double crochets up the next side of our strawberry. making it back to the top of our chain from row 13, just finishing off with a slip. So our round row, don't really know what to call it for 14, is just a loop around the edge of our strawberry there. And we'll snip off the red colour ahead of making our leafy top for our berry. So we're going to make the top of our strawberry now with our grass green colour. So we're just going to add a slip knot to add this to our hook. And we are chaining 4 to start. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. We're going to add a half treble crochet into the second chain from the hook. So we're yarning over. 1, 2, that's our second, just adding a half treble into there. Well, I've not quite caught the stitch there, so I'm just going to go back out and do that again to go in between the 2 posts of the stitch. And then we're going to add 1 more half treble crochet into each of the next 2. And this is the top of our berry. We're going to chain 5. Because we haven't got an awful lot to hold on to, it will feel a bit fiddly, but it will start to feel a bit easier to hold once we've made another leaf. So we're going to yarn over and we're going to add a half treble crochet into the second chain from the hook. And we're going to add 1 half treble crochet into each of the next 3. So we're going to meet the first leafy part we made back at there again. And then to anchor this part of our leaf in, just going to slip stitch into the side of that half treble crochet that we've made there. Just pop our hook in where it feels natural, and then we slip. And that's our center point. So we're going to complete another 2 more leaves in the same way. So we're going to chain 5. We're going to half treble crochet into the second chain from the hook and into the next 3. And then we're slipping back into that same stitch that we slipped into before, anchoring our leafy part down. And then we're chaining 5 to create the last part of our leafy section. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're adding a half treble crochet into that second chain from the hook. And then 1 half treble crochet into each of the next 3. And we just want to slip back into that same space that we have done previously. And then we can tie our green colour off with a nice long tail to weave in onto the top of our berry. So we just add that there as so. So we've created our leafy top and we've created our berry. So let's add our leafy top to our strawberry. So we have a yarn needle. And there's nothing too complicated about this. Just going to pop the top of our strawberry on wherever we feel it looks right. So I think that's about centre for me. I'm just going to anchor the leafy part onto the berry directly through. So we don't need to worry about what the back of our work looks like. Just need to focus on the front.
We just keep catching our leafy section here through. I'll show you what the back looks like now. So we've done that around the centre post there of another stitch, but that's okay. And we've added it nice and neatly there. So we can now weave in the green ends to cut them off. Just do this. It's a nice simple way here. Catch all of the stitches along one of the leaves, doesn't matter which one you use. And pull that through. We can cut that off in a second. And again, do the same for this one. Find one of the leaves that we want to wiggle this needle through. Push it all the way through. And then we can snip that off there. So we're just missing our little lemon coloured seeds for our strawberry. So we'll just get some of our lemon yarn, cut a length. We can add this to our needle. Now nothing needs to be perfect here. Fruit, it's never exactly the same whenever we whenever we buy it, see it at markets, whatever, it always looks a little bit different. Nature is perfectly imperfect. So I'm just tying a knot at the end of this so it catches. And we're going to think about where we want these seeds to be placed. So I quite like going from front to back to start. Just pop your needle in, and you can see, don't really need them up here because we're not going to see an awful lot. Just pull that through. Whoops. Let's go again through an actual stitch rather than a gap. There we go. And I like to keep the seeds almost a stitch in length themselves. So again, find the next stitch length below and just pop it back through. Again, as we've said, we don't really need to worry about what the back looks like. So we have our one pip there, work along. So if we work along a couple of stitches and we pop in the needle from front to back again. Working below that stitch, popping the needle back through, and again skipping a couple, working back through, into a stitch length below, and again a couple of stitches along, and we'll have our first row of pips complete, or seeds. In we go. And what does look quite nice is when we follow for our next row, if we give them a bit of space, we can just, instead of doing 4, we can do 1, 2, 3, and then again we can take to 2 and then 1 at the end. So we've just finished adding our seeds in the lemon yarn colour to the front of our strawberry, and now we have finished our berry ready to attach to our panels when we get to it.
See, I told you, they're not as hard as they look, are they? But if you are needing a little bit of help, pop your questions into our Facebook group on the Sirdar Make Along group. I'll be popping there again. I can't get to every single one, but I'm happy to help where I can. I really hope you enjoyed working on your cherries. They are super fun, and I cannot wait to see you all at week 5.